Hey everybody, welcome back. In today's video, I want to have a look at Monero. Now, we've never looked at Monero on the channel, and there's a reason for that, and that's because, to be honest with you, I don't think this video will do very well. I don't think many people will watch this video. And when I make videos, there's sort of a balancing act that I have to take into account. That's, do I want to make a video that I might find more interesting and I think might be more useful to people if they understood, or do I want to make a video where it'll get more clicks and it'll help my channel growth, and that will ultimately end up leading me to a point where I can create more useful advice to a wider audience. And this is one of those videos where I just want to produce something I am interested in and I think will be very useful to the people who watch it, whether you're interested in Monero or not. And the reason that is because the crypto space is full of volatility. That's the whole appeal of crypto. It's the fact that a price can go up 20% in a day or it can drop 20% in a day. And, you know, that's not even an extreme example. We see that quite regularly, especially in times of like bull runs and bear runs. We see price drops and price rallies that are unimaginable in the stock market. Even sort of penny stock levels, the fact that they can just keep consistently putting in these crazy moves regularly. It's not just one day crash, it's like years of movements like this. But what's interesting about Monero, and again, other coins similar to it, like Litecoin, other old school, very long-term cryptocurrencies that have stood the test of time, is that their volatility is slowing down. It's peeling off. And unlike Bitcoin, where Bitcoin keeps putting in new highs, new all-time highs every cycle, Litecoin and Monero and other coins similar to it, but we're looking at Monero today, has stayed within a range that sort of hasn't put in an all-time high since 2017. And you might look at that and say, oh, well, you know, it's a shit coin then. It's not doing anything. It's just, it'll never break above its all-time high. What's the point of me putting money in it? And the point necessarily isn't that it's not putting in all-time highs. The point is that it's finally starting to even out and this volatility is slowing down. And again, like I said, if you look at older coins, like Litecoin, you'll see a very similar thing play out where the volatility has slowed down. And in a way, this is an extremely good thing, in my opinion, to have in the crypto space, because there is no safe haven really in the crypto space. You can put your money in Bitcoin, but there's a good chance that that will also drop 30% overnight. You can put your money in US dollar, like USDT or USDC, but all that is basically is the added risk of those providers, those coin issuers going bust and that coin becoming worthless. Whereas compared to just holding normal US dollar, which is arguably a lot more untraceable if it's cash, and a lot more safe because America has to fall for it to be worth nothing. And if that happens, then your USDT and your USDC is also worth nothing. So you're either in the crypto space and you're holding Bitcoin if you want to play it safe, or you follow something like PaxG, which is related to gold. But again, that's totally dependent on a third party. PaxG could sell all their gold tomorrow, or they could have a crash and your coin is worth nothing and there's nobody covering you for it. But here, with Monero, with Litecoin, we're finally seeing some sort of a price diminishment. And to be honest with you, I think this is the goal that ultimately Bitcoin wants to become. And I think we will see this eventually with Bitcoin, but I think there's just too much hype around it. But for the coins that have loyal communities that have been there for, you know, close to a decade and have stood the test of time and continue to grow and serve as an actual useful transaction base that can be kept private or hidden transactions or with low transaction fees and can be sent across to the other side of the world and the fee is 30 cents. It's kind of, in my opinion, what I think Bitcoin was hoping to become, a stable enough currency where you can send someone one XMR, one Monero, and in a few weeks it's still going to be worth more or less the same amounts compared to its US dollar and euro and pound value. So with that long sort of explanation out the way of why I am interested in Monero, and that's not even getting into the software side of it, which is brilliant, but solely on price today, that is my opinion on what I want Monero to be and what I think it could be. And, you know, we're just going to sort of go through the evidence of that with the price to back it up. So as you can see, we've got these two resistance and support lines here that have, again, been around since sort of mid-third quarter 2017 and have more or less held up until today. We can see, like, if we zoom in, that we've basically gone through two halving cycles. With these ranges, the price has ultimately spent the most amount of time in. And it's basically operated within these two ranges for most of the time. We can see we spent a couple of years here below. We spent, you know, basically 2 years, but 2 years out of 7 years or so. It's still a huge amount, but again, this was during crazy times with COVID and lots of stuff going on. But again, it is something to keep in mind that it has deviated from this pattern, and it has deviated for a substantial amount of time, with retests that have failed to break above, till we did eventually break above, and now we've stayed within. And another thing I will get into is it broke above after a halving, and we often see that with Monero, after halvings, price action is usually quite good on the US dollar pair. And again, that could be sort of to do with the fact that it's a bull run, it goes into a bull run. That probably is the most likely cause. You know, we see a lot of the altcoin space and Bitcoin do this as well, where after a halving, price goes up. And where we currently are now with Monero is we're sort of following this trend, and we're coming up very close to a halving. And, you know, like I said, price often trends up after a halving. And a lot of you might look at this sort of, well, we had the halving at a much lower price. Monero was at $64 when we last went through the halving, and it rallied up to just under 500. So why can't we have a big rally like that again and break above this resistance? And I think we might. Well, we could, definitely. There's no ruling it out. But I do think that ultimately Monero's volatility will slow down. And just like what we've seen here for basically since 2022, Monero has still moved a lot on its price. I mean, if we take a look at it from its all-time high to its low, Monero went down 80%. But if you look at the rest of the altcoin market, that is extremely good. That is like, you know, Cardano, Avalanche, Solana, Matic, Chainlink, Filecoin, they all went down over 95%. And then we see that during this time as well, it hasn't really rallied too much either. It hasn't exploded back up. So basically, what we can sort of draw from XMR so far from this previous cycle is that after the halving, we rally up into the bull run, where we put in a high or return to our high. And then after that, we go through the bear market year. Monero doesn't suffer as badly as other altcoins. And once it sort of puts in its low, it just sort of trades at a semi-constant price. Now, the price does fluctuate from sort of, you know, $100 to $180, which is still a big fluctuation. But again, compared to what altcoins have done since, you know, mid-2022, that is pretty stable. As far as stable goes in the cryptocurrency space, that's going to be as stable as you're going to get in a lot of situations, especially with the security of having an altcoin that's sort of in the top 50. Like, it has a market cap of over 2 billion, close to 3 billion. It's 2.7 billion, which to me shows that it's not forgotten about. It, you know, to me, if a cryptocurrency has above $1 billion in its market cap, it's somewhat reliable. It's not there for nothing. Now, I know we've had Luna and other cryptocurrencies that have gotten to these heights and then crashed. But again, zooming out, Monero has been here for a long time. It hasn't been here much less than Bitcoin, to be honest with you. So again, I would put stock in that Monero will still continue to be around for a while. It's still the go-to privacy coin that people use in the crypto space. And whether that's for ill intent or just wanting financial privacy, there is a reason it's widely used. It's because it is the best at concealing transactions. It also has low fees and, you know, very quick payments. But I'm sure, to be honest with you, if you're watching this video, you know what Monero is. So getting into more of a price side of it, a few things that I do want to point out is before the halvings, we often see a slow trend upwards with Monero. We see here, back in the 2016 halving, Monero trended up for about a year. All of 2015 and all of 2016 basically trended up for Monero. And then after the halving, we rallied up quite extreme. We can see that coming up to the last halving that we had back in 2020, Monero also trended up, but at a much slower rate. And you can see here as well, it sort of does a triangle in a way. It rallies up and then peels back down. Here we rally up and peel back down, but again, we are trending up. And then, you know, after the halving, we have another trend up. But again, notice how these lines are slowly tending closer to horizontal, to zero. You know, not that they're going to trend to zero, but these lines are slowly becoming less extreme. They're getting closer to 3 o'clock. And again, sort of this cycle, what we've seen is Monero has trended up slightly for well over a year, but again, at a much more smoother rate, a much slower line up. So maybe we can expect a similar, less extreme move to the upside after this. And that would sort of corroborate again my idea of us having a returning to this high because we have a less extreme move up. If we have a move like this, you know, where this is our low and Monero rallies from $350 as our base up to $400, $500 above, I don't think that's too unreasonable. Again, if you want to be really sort of get into the nitty gritty, we can see Monero rallies 700% from this sort of dodgy end of the line thing that doesn't really count for anything. Let's actually bring it to the peak so that we can get a more accurate reading, which more or less lines up with this support line. Monero rallies up 400% from where this sort of trend continues onto the day of its peak. If we go here from, again, the day of its peak, where it rallies up, Monero goes up 160%. So we're dropping about 60% here in how far we're moving each time. If we drop 60% again of how far we move up here, that will put us somewhere around of a 60% move up, I want to say. And if we go here and move 60% up, we're looking at like a sub $600 Monero, which would be an all-time high for the coin, but at the same time, that is just an extremely rough and ready calculation that I literally just spotted as recording this video. I didn't notice it as I was like looking at the coin beforehand. So I'm sure there's multiple things wrong with that you could find and easily prove or make a stronger argument against it. One thing I do also want to point out with Monero is that, like a lot of other coins, like Bitcoin, we've seen, towards the halving, we usually have some sort of a sell-off, followed by a rally, or vice versa. And here you can see we have a pump and then a quite a big sell-off leading up to the halving, not too long before it at all. And we can see it lasts about 14 weeks. And then again, and it finishes up pretty close to the halving again, like we only have 4 or 5 weeks before the halving when this sort of bottoms out here. And again, going up to here, the last halving that we had, a few weeks before that, Monero had a rally and then a big sell-off. And again, this is the one that's contended as the COVID sell-off. It shouldn't have happened, it won't happen again sort of thing. Even though we have seen sell-offs like this before, and if you look on BTC, the halving before this, we also had a sell-off in a similar move. We can see this one was a lot shorter, 12 weeks, and then we still had a few weeks here, 5 or 6 weeks until the halving. And then price generally trended up as it did up here. You know, we sort of went into bullrun mode. Again, here, what we're seeing at the moment is that we haven't had any big sell-off, and we haven't had any rally either to start it off with. Like here we have a rally and a sell-off. Here we had a rally and a sell-off. Here we haven't had a rally, and we definitely haven't had a sell-off yet. We're still following this trend up, even if we are testing the lows at the moment. Maybe we've sort of skipped a rally, and we might just go straight into the sell-off and have a few weeks to sort of climb as we get towards the halving. But ultimately, I do think that maybe we will just climb like we have the last few times once Monero has passed the halving date. It usually just does go up on its US dollar pair. Again, with this cycle, we see Monero only really visited these lows once of about $100, excluding from when we rallied up above it. We only came down here once, and again, this sort of shows an evening out. And you can see that if you want to sort of draw another resistance line of the trend that we've been following, we can see that we are coming up to a sort of explosive time. As you can see, there's quite a strong pinch coming up. And if we really zoom in on it, it does kind of illustrate how volatile the price is at the moment. And again, this is perfect timing before the halving. So we could see some sort of explosive move up. We've just sort of hit this bottom here, and we haven't really broken below. We've opened above, and we're currently above. Now, I'm not saying that we will go above. We could very easily dip below. This could go either way. The fact that we've been in a general trend upwards would make me lean more towards the side of an upward movement. And again, this would coincide with what I've said of we have a move up before we have a move down, like we have the last few times, move up, move down. And again, sometimes the move ups are greater than the moves down. Sometimes the move ups are less than the moves down. All we know is that towards the halving, we have quite strong, volatile price movement from Monero, which does seem to be playing out here again. And you could draw, like, you could make similar lines for previous halvings, if I could find like a nice way of looking at it. I don't think that's a great example, but in a more volatile zone, these gaps are going to look bigger. And you can see we maybe even play out the same here. We've touched the bottom, we rally up to the top, that might be our pump, and then we have a sell-off that breaks below. Or maybe we have maybe a move like this where we spend a lot of time on the bottom and then explode to the upside. Here we can see that we spent, kind of not really comparing too much to either. We spent a lot of time hugging the top, and now we've just dipped down to the below. So we might see a reverse of this, where here we hugged the bottom and then moved out to the upside. we might see like a reverse that where we hug the upside and move to the downside. Again, very speculative, but I do think long term Monero will continue to operate within some sort of a range like this where it's sort of sub 500, above 100, you know? And if we take a look at it on its Bitcoin pair, we can see there's a lot going on with this price. And I'll be honest with you, it's a bit of a mess in terms of how price correlates to the cycles that Monero's in. We can see that, first of all, the cycle that we are currently in, that's about to end, has been one of the most stable for Monero on its Bitcoin pair. We can see we have slowly trended downward, which again does kind of corroborate to my theory of Monero slowing down in price and not ever really doing amazing in terms of price movement, because Bitcoin will continue to put in all-time highs and Monero will continue to stay as a semi-constant in this sea of unconstants, you know? So it has to lose price against its Bitcoin pair. And we can see we've actually just broken below this sort of long-term support that Monero has been riding for quite a while. And we can see, I didn't want to draw it too far back because it's kind of, it was ugly and it was taking up a lot of eye space and quite distracting, but it does basically line up with these sort of initial prices, and it comes through this point here that sort of Monero absolutely exploded up from. It is quite a significant trend line. It's been around for basically all of Monero's time on its Bitcoin pair. We can see that last bull run on Monero's Bitcoin pair, like, it rallied up, but it didn't even touch its all-time highs. And again, like here we see the year after, during the bull run, we have a rally up, and then we sort of plateau down. Towards the end of the year, we're sort of, you know, displacement is zero. We didn't really go anywhere if we take it from the start of the year to the end of the year. But we see that for the whole of the post-bull run year, the bear market, Monero gains on its Bitcoin pair, which is a bit unusual, to be honest with you. Like, a lot of altcoins bleed on their Bitcoin pairs as well as their US dollar pairs in the bear market. However, if you go to 2017 and, you know, you have this bull run, Monero does good, slowly trends up sort of on its Bitcoin pair. End of the year, Monero, you know, year after the bull run, the bear run, Monero absolutely tanks like the year basically, and it tanks again the year after that. So it's completely different to what's happened this cycle. And again, like, go back 2 years from the bull run, 2015, we see it tanks again the year 2014 for what we had from launch. I know we don't have a full year of data, but it just tanks. So in a similar way that it did in 2018, just tanks. 2014, just tanks. 2015, very quick revival, tanks again. So it's only sort of this last year that's deviated from the trend on its Bitcoin pair. And again, it has slowed down in its price movements and where it's gone. What worries me a little is that we have dipped below here. And coming up to the halving, we can see that, again, very similar to its US dollar pair, Monero does rally oftentimes after the halving, followed by a big sell-off. For the first cycle, it was pre-indated with a similar sort of pump and dump that we saw on its US dollar pair. And then afterwards, we had a big pump and then a not as big dump, but still quite a big dump. Here, we didn't really get that sort of initial rally up and down. We see like a triangle, but, you know, I wouldn't mirror image that too much, to be honest with you. We do have a rally up, but then followed by a stronger sell-off. So again, it's like, you know, we know that a pump and a dump occurs, but so far it's 1-for-1 for who was the stronger side, the bears or the bulls. So this year it could be either. One thing we did see though is that the last time we had a strong move up to the upside on its Bitcoin pair, we had a very strong sell-off beforehand. And to be honest with you, these two moves here don't look too dissimilar. If we take a look at minus 60% on that guy, and if we take a look over here, we're about a minus 45 at the moment from where we stopped crashing originally from. If you want to turn on the bull market support band, it does also sort of paint a similar picture. We are on a downward trend. And again, it might be a decent time to move Bitcoin into Monero. It might be a poor time. We can see here, you know, Monero is spending a lot of its time above the line and also below the line. It was kind of jumping to and fro. But we saw, like, if you're going to compare these two here, you'd have to assume this sell-off is kind of this sell-off, and then this rally doesn't exist, and this sell-off is this sell-off. And it's playing out in a similar way in the fact that it goes below the bull market support band, and it only goes above when we have a rally. Here we haven't had a rally, and that's why it hasn't gone above, and it's continued to dip down. So if we do have another move like this, and we trade sideways into the halving, which I personally don't think will happen, we should see like we won't go above the bull market support band. If, however, we find a bottom and then rally up in a similar way that we found our bottom here and we rallied up from that point. You know, we put in a low and it was like literally, this is the weekly chart, but it was literally a day or two, and then we moved, you know, to the upside really quickly after that. If it's a similar move like that, then I expect that we will move above our bull market support band. And again, the only real time Monero moves above its bull market support band is when price action is doing very well. When Monero's price action is doing okay, it doesn't really get above its bull market support band. It trades on it. You know, here sort of these times trades on it. Here during this last sort of cycle, we see that Monero trades sideways and the bull market trades with it. When we have big sell-offs, it dips below. It has a recovery rally, it dips above and then sideways and down below. It's going sideways, still below, has a little rally up, trends up for whole of 2022, and then back down below for the whole of 2023. Again, it's, to be honest with you, it's a coin that follows long-term trends. And currently we've been in a long-term trend of downward. So you could make the case that, okay, we're probably going to flip soon and we'll go into a long-term trend of upwards. I would be leaning more towards that because after the halving, Monero does usually do well on its Bitcoin pair. Or you could say, well, we're not out of this long downward trend yet. And there's valid reason to believe that as well. We haven't caught up. Our bull market support band hasn't caught up with our price yet. And we obviously, you know, price needs to go above the bull market support band, so they need to meet at some point. Maybe when they meet, it might be worth looking into moving Bitcoin into Monero. You might want to move it into other coins because, again, you're not going to get as high gains with Monero. And if you're in crypto for the money, to make a lot of money, which most people are, let's be real. I mean, I'd say almost all people are, especially if you're a risk taker. Monero is not going to be your coin, really. Then you're probably better off looking at something like Solana, Avalanche, or Chainlink as well. When we did our video on Chainlink, it was very interesting. It's looking like it might turn out a bit like Monero, to be honest with you, Chainlink. But it's still at an early stage where it's still quite volatile, even though the coin has been around for, you know, over 5 years. Anyway, that's, again, different coin, different video. I think that's about everything that I wanted to cover in this video. Again, just a quick check. How many weeks do we have before the halving? 14 weeks. So again, we can sort of rule out this type of a move because we don't have that long before the halving. They are diminishing in terms of how quickly these sell-offs occur before the halving. And I think that is actually even less, to be honest with you. I think it's more like 11, 10 weeks, but I think I've changed it slightly because if it goes below a certain length, the arrow disappears. So I think it is actually 9 weeks. It could be potentially 9 weeks. But anyway, let's just call it 10 weeks. We could have an extreme move we could have an extreme move over a much shorter period of time that's not as extreme as the ones we had before. And again, it does sort of look this way with this sort of closing wedge that's sort of pinching the price action at the moment. And again, whichever way we move, we will probably have a very strong move in that direction. If we bounce above this line, I'm pretty sure we'll break above. If we don't bounce above this line, I'm pretty sure we will drop pretty hard below. Anyway, that's about it, guys. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe. Tell me if you like learning more about these sort of, not obscure coins, but learning more about different aspects of the crypto space that might not be so heavily focused on making huge amounts of money, but might be a better store of wealth maybe during a bear market, or just in times where you want to keep money in the crypto space, but you don't want to have the risk of it in US dollar in case that third-party provider collapses, or you think Bitcoin is too volatile. It's kind of, let me know in the comments anyway. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks very much for watching. Take care and peace.